Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan, it's Gameweek27, and today we're going to rank some players. Guys, if you enjoyed this one, make sure you drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get started. Okay, so as always, 5 categories. We've got the 30 most popular transfers in for Game Week 27 at time of recording, and we're going to basically see how good they are, in my opinion. So let's start off with the 30th most popular transfer in at time of recording, and that is going to be Raya. I know a lot of us are looking for new goalkeepers this week with Dubravka being dropped in the Arsenal game, and can Raya be the solution? Well, potentially. At 5 million, I don't think he's such a bad pick. In general, don't really like goalkeeper transfers too much, so it's always going to be an option, and generally speaking, don't see too many goalkeepers keeping regular clean sheets this season, so defensive transfers maybe not really working out. But if you're looking to go for a long-term goalkeeper, Raya could be the answer. 5 million, not too expensive. You're getting someone from the best defence in the Premier League at the moment. Decent fixture this week against Sheffield United, so you should get instant returns from Raya. So overall, I think if you're going to go for a goalkeeper right now, Raya's definitely not a bad shout, with many of us looking to double up on the Arsenal defence. No problem there whatsoever. Next up, Edison. I'm actually going to drop him into the avoid category. He hasn't got great fixtures coming up, I'm not going to lie to you. This game week, we've got a tough one, a big derby match against Manchester United, then another big game against Liverpool after that. After that, we're looking at a very likely blank for Man City. We'll find out exactly who blanks in Game Week 29 within the next couple of days, but right now, we have to assume that Edison is going to blank in Game Week 29. Raya, we assume he blanks in Game Week 29 as well, but Edison more likely, and there's not even exactly good fixtures around this for Man City either. One more advantage Raya has over Edison is we might see a double game week for Arsenal in Game Week 34. That's looking pretty likely for a double game week for Arsenal. So I know that's a few weeks away still, but it's something to consider. When we're picking up a new goalkeeper, we often want them for the long term, particularly we want them for maybe at least a 8 or 9 game week period, and therefore Raya is going to be having that slight advantage over Edison with better fixtures, double game week coming up a little bit sooner as well. Tony next. I think he is definitely an okay pick to go for. I think he's got to be at least in good transfer. I don't know necessarily if you need to go for him this week. I mean, we've got a fixture this week against Chelsea and then Arsenal. But then after that, Game Week 29, guaranteed fixture against Burnley, and that is going to be a good one. The question is now the time to buy Tony, or can we wait a little bit longer before going in on him? I think you definitely can afford to wait, and Tony is a player who will score in any game. Pretty fixture-proof as a player, but I'm not going to put him any higher than a good transfer because I just don't see him having that whole potential over the next 2 game weeks. Next up, Doughty. I know a lot of people will be interested in him because of the double game week coming up next week, but do we want to wait until after the Aston Villa game? We imagine Luton, as always, will concede quite a few goals in this game against an Aston Villa team that is flying at the moment in terms of goals scored. The question is, can Doughty get an attacking return? I definitely think it's possible, and therefore, even against Villa, I think it is an option to go for Doughty if you're looking for a new defender. Next game week, however, that's probably going to be the big one for Doughty, and it looks like right now he might have a Game Week 29 fixture. Again, that could quickly go downhill if we find out later this game week. Remember, guys, we're going to find out so much information between now and Wednesday evening that maybe going for transfers right now is not a great idea, but based on current information, Doughty is an optional pick. Bailey up next. I think he's going to go down as a good transfer. Good fixtures in the next 4. No blank in Game Week 29. Cheap at 5.6 million. I don't really see too much of a problem with going for him at all. He's in good form at the moment. Finally finding his feet at Aston Villa, and is he now nailed on potentially? I think he's very close to being in that nailed on position, and Aston Villa need to continue that good form. They can't really afford to rotate players. They're not in other cup competitions unless you count European competition, but I guess that's a different conversation. Might see a bit of rotation there, but Aston Villa, you know, they're looking to go for top 4 this season, and they need to win these games, so Bailey is going to be a crucial part of that. Odegaard I'm going to put in optional. I think definitely going for another Arsenal player against Sheffield United is definitely a good idea. It's definitely somewhere you might want to look this game week. However, Odegaard just not producing consistent FPL returns this season, particularly in regards to goals. We saw last game, 4 goals scored against Newcastle. Odegaard without a single goal involvement. It seems like the only Arsenal attacker that is seemingly guaranteed attacking returns at the moment is Saka. So therefore, is Odegaard a little bit risky to go for at 8.5 million? Probably. So yeah, may be wanting to give a pass on him, but I think he's definitely an option when you look at the fixtures in the next two. Got Brentford in 28 as well, and a likely blank in 29. Trippier, straight and avoid. Easy one there. Newcastle defenders, we just do not want to go for them. Clean sheets are a thing of the past. We know we're talking about players who are getting minus points every game for conceding so many goals. So, you know, you're not even going to get points just for them playing. You really do depend on attacking returns for Newcastle defenders. And Trippier, he's not providing them consistently. So, yeah, just an avoid straight up. Not a player I'd want to have at the moment. Neto, I think he's a good idea for a goalkeeper as well. I'd put him up there with Raya with the double game week up next. A little bit cheaper than Raya. Double game week next game week. Pretty decent fixture for Bournemouth this week against Burnley as well. No problem with going for a Neto this game week if you do want to get involved a little bit more on double game week 28. Now is the time to start building towards that, isn't it? Darwin, I think we need to put him in optional at the moment. It's just that we don't know if he's going to be available or not. Not even on the bench in the League Cup final, which does suggest that maybe he is not quite in the best state right now. Going into game week 27, is he going to be ready to start a game? Not sure. He could be available. He might not be available. The other players seem to be doing quite well in the Liverpool attack at the moment. So it's not that he's not needed, but will he be given one more game maybe to kind of just recover before game week 28, which is really the big game for Liverpool? That's the game against Man City. Will he be chanced in this Nottingham Forest game? I'm not sure. I want to see more evidence of Darwin being fit and available. I want to see him training. I want to see positive comments from Jurgen Klopp before we will be going in on a player like Darwin. Just not the forward I'd be going for at the moment. Kelleher is an interesting one. He is a super short-term pick because really you're looking only at the next 2 game weeks where he's going to be useful at all to you, and arguably only the next 1 game week. So for that reason, I think we do actually drop Kelleher in a void. Now, if you already have Kelleher, great. Think he will score well for you this game week. But do you really want to play him against Man City in game week 28? Probably not. Game week 29, he's probably going to have a blank. Super likely to have a blank. Game week 30 against Brighton. By that point, are we going to see Alisson back in the Liverpool team? Very likely. So really, if you buy Kelleher, 3.7 million goalkeeper, is only really useful for you for game week 27 and not beyond that. So when we talk about goalkeepers wanting to be a long-term investment, Kelleher just does not provide that. So if you've got him already, fantastic. If you don't, probably would leave that. Pickford, I mean, if you're not worried about game week 29 being a blank, then maybe you could go for him. I mean, Pickford is just ticking along nicely. He's not necessarily getting huge scores, but he is getting more points than other goalkeepers right now. And at 4.6 million, it's not exactly the worst price. I don't mind him. West Ham up next. Just be aware of the blank game weeks. The fixtures aren't exactly amazing. And Everton, another team that could have a double game week in 34 as well, depending on results. So, yeah, Pickford, he's okay. He's okay. Probably not my first choice goalkeeper to bring in this week, but he's in the conversation at least. Erling Haaland, what do we think about this one? I don't know if he is a must buy at this moment. If you don't already have him, I don't think you have to get him necessarily, but I don't know if you guys watched Manchester United against Fulham. It didn't look great, and you do think this Man City team will possibly do some damage. I think it is a good fixture, Man City at home against Manchester United if you're an attacker at the moment, and therefore, can we see Haaland being the best captain for this game week? If he is, then he has to be very high on this list. After that, we've got a game against Liverpool. Can he do damage against Liverpool? I mean, the top players will score against anyone, won't they? The blank in 29 is likely and not exactly appealing. And in 30, again, we've got Liverpool. So the fixtures aren't great for Haaland. And that's the reason he's not going to go any higher than this. But we know how good he is. And he always has to be at least in good transfer, great transfer. He has to be at least in these categories, no matter what the situation, unless he's got like a blank this game week, which he doesn't. We've got 2 more game weeks of Haaland that you might find yourself a little bit behind the pack if he does go off, because obviously super popular player. Branthwaite, similar situation to Pickford, maybe a little bit more appealing because his nice cheap price. I think he's a really nice bench option to go for. Rotate him in and out as needed, as long as you can find yourself covering game week 29. If you are not free hitting in game week 29, Branthwaite is not going to be for you. But we'll put him in the optional category. Definitely a player who can do something in and around the next few fixtures. Pascal Gross, this is a really interesting one. His numbers are good at the moment. He's on penalties while João Pedro is out, and the next 2 fixtures are pretty decent. I think he's at least an optional. I'm going to put him in optional for now, because I'm not sure I really want him from game week 29 onwards, because at that point, Brighton's fixtures really go downhill. So we've got a super likely blank for Brighton in game week 29. And then after that, the fixtures are just horrible for 4 or 5 game weeks. So He's a short-term punt. He really is a short-term punt, which I don't mind as much as a midfielder to go for a short-term punt. Defenders, goalkeepers are not really players we want to go for short-term punts this season. But yeah, I don't mind. He's at least an optional pick who might get you some points. Bradley, similar situation to Kelleher. Yeah, Trent is going to be most likely back in game week 30, and before that we've got one good fixture against Nottingham Forest. We've got a horrible fixture against Man City, which you're not going to want to play Bradley for, and game week 29 blank there as well. So yeah, he's too short term. He's a 1 game week punt, Bradley at the very best. If you are looking for a 1 week punt, then maybe a Kelleher or a Bradley might be good for you, but outside of that, super unique circumstances, and I don't think I would be particularly going for them. Van Dijk at least is a little bit more long term, but again, over the next 3 fixtures, can Van Dijk provide enough in order to be a great pick? I mean, come on, he has just scored a goal in the League Cup final, so maybe that's tempting. I don't mind him. He's okay, but I think I prefer going for a player like Doughty with a more likely game week 29 fixture, double game week next week, and maybe a little bit more reliable attacking threat from Doughty compared to Van Dijk. Although Van Dijk will score headers, and I think Van Dijk could do well this game week, but after that, yeah, I don't know. He might cause more problems than he solves, to be honest. Cole Palmer, I think he's always got to be, at least optional. Maybe he's a good transfer. I think if you've lost him recently, you maybe want to see him back in your team. Again, depending on how well you can cover game week 29, that's the only problem with Palmer, really. So I'm going to drop him in good transfer and no higher than that. But yeah, Palmer's just been a consistent, reliable FPL asset all season. Still a really nice price. It's actually dropped in price a little bit, so he's even more affordable than he perhaps was a month ago. And he's no less of a player, really. In fact, he's been playing in some really nice attacking positions recently. And you do think, next fixture against Brentford, could he do some damage there? Definitely. After that, maybe not so sure, but yeah, certainly right now, I think Cole Palmer, next 2 fixtures, Brentford this game week, then following game week, it's a game against Newcastle. Newcastle often are a team that concede a lot of goals, as we see every single game week. So, hey, maybe Palmer could be okay. But yeah, just got to be aware of game week 29. Although, if Leeds beat Chelsea in the FA Cup, everything changes, and Palmer, I think, probably becomes one of the most essential midfielders to own in the game. Next up, Lewis Dunk. I'm going to put him in the avoid section. He's not like a hard avoid, because he has got good fixtures over the next 2, but the differences between a Dunk and a Gross is that midfielders, we're often using lots of transfers to switch in these high upside midfielders in and out of the team all the time. Where defenders, we do want defenders that are a little bit more long term. So unless you're planning on wildcarding very, very soon, Dunk is really only good for the next 2 game weeks. Like I say, 29, super likely blank. Even if he doesn't blank, it's a game against Man City. And then after that, fixtures horrible. And with defenders in particular, we want to make sure we're picking players who have good fixtures, and Lewis Dunk is just not going to be that guy from game week 29 onwards. You've got 2 game weeks from him. That's not enough. It's not enough for a defender. We want defenders who can be trusted for a longer time. Saliba is a player who can be trusted for a longer time. I think Arsenal can keep a clean sheet against pretty much anyone. So I think he's got to go up here with the likes of Raya. Maybe you even put him slightly higher because of that kind of occasional headed goal. You might see that against Sheffield United. We've seen them struggling from the set pieces in the past. So I'm going to put Saliba in great transfer. In terms of defenders, I think he's definitely really, really up there in terms of defenders you want to go for. Maybe we drop him down into good transfer because he's not quite a Gabriel necessarily, but still, if you're looking for a new defender, you already got Gabriel in your team, or you have one spare slot for an Arsenal player. Saliba's got to be pretty high on your list with this fixture against Sheffield United. Instantaneous returns you're pretty much looking at from him. Luis Diaz, maybe in and around Darwin. We probably expect him to play next game. He's been in very good form recently. But the Man City game after this, and maybe some rotation after that, when we see the likes of Salah come back into the team, Darwin, Cody Gakpo's been in reasonably good form as well. Elliott's been competing for those places a little bit higher in the attacking positions as well. Could we see some rotation from Luis Diaz? Possibly. I think he's probably one of the more nailed-on players at Liverpool at the moment, though, in fairness to him. So, particularly with Jota being out for probably quite some time. We're not exactly sure how long Jota is going to be out for, but it's going to be at least a few game weeks. So, therefore, Luis Diaz, where do we rate him? This game week against Nottingham Forest, like him. 2 after that, don't like him. So, yeah, let's put him in optional. It's going to depend on your strategy, I suppose. Morris is a really interesting one. I mean, a lot of people talking about Solanke for the double game week next week. What about Morris? And what is interesting is Aston Villa not doing too great defensively at the moment, and they have got a lot of injury problems in their defence. So even though Luton play against Aston Villa this week, you probably wouldn't necessarily want a Luton defender, but a Luton attacker against Aston Villa, and then a double game week after that. It's not so bad, is it, really? So maybe we do throw Morris in the good transfer category at that price. I don't know. Is that controversial, guys? Let me know. Next up, Senesi. Probably one of the top defender targets to go for right now. Might even be happy to drop him in great transfer. He's at least a good transfer. But I am going to put him in great for this game week against Burnley. And then a double game week next game week against Sheffield United and Luton Town. Really nice double game week. I think over the next 2 game weeks, Senesi is probably going to be the highest scoring defender on paper, you would say. Game week 29 is obviously going to throw up all kinds of problems. Hopefully you guys know how you're going to navigate that one by now, or at least you will do by the time we hit this deadline. So you can decide whether it is worth going for a Senesi and trying to capitalise on the next 2 game weeks, because I think short term, he's great. After that, Bournemouth's defensive numbers are actually really, really good. They are actually a very decent defence at the moment. So even going on beyond in a slightly longer term, we could see Bournemouth defenders actually being not bad players to own, maybe rotate a little bit on and off your bench depending on the fixtures. Actually not so bad. Gabriel, however, is he the top defender target? I mean, if you don't have Gabriel yet, what are you waiting for? He has just been so essential this season, hasn't he? I don't know if he's quite a must-buy because of that blank game week in 29 and the tough fixture against City in 30, but certainly he's not a player you'd want to go without, is he? So, yeah, he's got to be a great transfer. Phil Foden, yeah, tough one. Again, Man United looking not so hot. Liverpool after that, blank after that, and Arsenal after that. Same situation as Haaland, but Haaland is just a more generally essential player. I think Foden is probably still in and around the good transfers, but it's going to be totally strategy dependent on whether you can really afford to go for him at the moment. But yeah, we'll put him in and around that area. We're going to have our first must-buy of the video, and that's going to be Ollie Watkins. No reason to not own him anymore. He's been so consistent recently. Guaranteed fixture in game week 29, and in and around that, continuous good fixtures, starting off with a game against a very leaky Luton Town. Got Spurs in 28, another very leaky defence. Good fixture in 29 against West Ham. It just runs and runs. Watkins, there's no reason to not own him. Some people might even say Watkins a potential captain option for this game week as well. We'll talk about captaincy, of course, in videos later on in the week, but Watkins has got to be in that conversation. Heung-min Son. I know a lot of people are looking to get him this week against Crystal Palace. Like, really excited about the return of Heung-min Son. I'm not 100% convinced by this one. I think he's definitely a decent shout, depending on who you're selling for him. Like, if you're selling, like, Saka for him, I would definitely not do that. If you're selling the De Bruyne for him, I think that could go both ways. I think if De Bruyne gets minutes against Manchester United, that's going to be very, very nice, actually. And might even outscore the likes of Son. But Son is definitely a great FPL pick that we've all been waiting a long time to get involved with him. He's got a fixture in game week 29 as well, so that's going to be advantageous to anyone not planning on using chips in the next couple of game weeks. So therefore, I do like him. I do like him as a pick. I think it's just risky. It depends who you're selling for him. I think that's going to define a lot. You know, if you've got a Jota in your team still and you're looking to remove Jota and maybe bring in Son, fantastic. I think that's a great transfer. But he is one of those players where it depends who you're selling in terms of whether it will actually be worth it or not. Speaking of midfielders and a player we literally just mentioned, it's going to be Saka. Saka, again, must buy despite the blank in 29. You know, we're talking about the player with best underlying numbers at the moment, getting the most points, really, out of most FPL players over the last kind of 4 or 5 game weeks. Arsenal in red-hot form with another very, very favourable fixture against a weak defence of Sheffield United. Again, another player, potential captain option. If we're talking about captains this week, Haaland's always going to be in the conversation. The other 2 players are going to be Watkins and Saka as the main talked about players. There is one more player who I think is obviously a captain option as well, which we'll speak about in just one moment. But yeah, Saka, again, just a player, there's no reason to not own him. I just cannot imagine a world without him in my team, which brings us to our next player, who is probably the hype player of game week 27, given his 26 results, and it's going to be Douglas Luiz. Now, it would be very easy for me to put him in the great transfer or must-buy category, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put him in good transfer, and I just want to make this very clear. He is a good player to go for. He is. I'm not trying to slate him. He's definitely an option and definitely a player worth talking about. However, last game week was really an anomaly. It really was. To see Douglas Luiz score 2 goals from open play is practically unheard of. He just doesn't do it. I mean, we see most game weeks he struggles to, you know, generate more than like 1 shot outside of the box, really, excluding those penalties. And he is going to get penalties, and he is going to take set pieces, which is the reasons why he is often a good pick, a good player, a good asset to own. I mean, he has been a good asset this season, but he, generally speaking, last game it was kind of the game week that the exception that proved the rule in many ways, because open play goals are not something you get from him too often. Yes, they will happen occasionally, and nothing in football can be fully predicted, but in general, I think his XG, his non-penalty XG this entire season, we're talking about 26 game weeks now, is 3. 3 expected goals in 26 game weeks outside of penalties. But he will get penalties. He will be still taking those set pieces. And even though last game week, bit of a freak result from him, you can't take that away from him. He is still going to take occasional shots and stuff like that. So, yeah, let's see what happens there. But I just want to be careful not to overhype this guy too much. Like, it's not going to happen every week. It really, really isn't. But kudos to anyone. Kudos to anyone who, I'm thinking about West Ham midfielders. Kudos to anyone who went from last game week. Enjoy those points. But don't expect them every game week. That's all I'm going to say. Next up, Salah. This is a really interesting one. I think if you have an opportunity to get Salah easily, and maybe if you're free hitting in 29 or wild cutting in 28, then he has to be a great transfer. And I'm not sure necessarily a must buy, but if he is fit and available, and I guess we don't know that, so maybe I'm, you know, contradicting myself a little bit talking about Salah compared to Darwin. But if we get news that Salah is good to go this game week, surely he becomes one of the main targets for anyone who is free hitting in 29 or wildcarding in 28. Because as a 1 week punt against Nottingham Forest, fantastic. Captain option, absolutely. However, it's that yellow Dorito of death next to his name that scares me a little bit. The fact he wasn't even in the squad to face Chelsea in the League Cup worries me a little bit. So for me, I'm going to need to see some convincing training pictures. I want to see Jurgen Klopp giving some nice comments about Salah before I can put him in this high category. So it's going to drop down into good transfer. Until we get more information, we really, really do need more information, don't we? Like, seriously. And finally, our final player, the most popular transfer of this game week, and I think he will be right the way until deadline, the most popular transfer of the game week, and it's going to be Solanke, and I'm going to put Solanke in great transfer. Now, the reason he's not going in must buy is because I don't think he is an absolute must buy for this game week. Next game week, he is a must-buy because he is your captain. He is your Game Week 28 captain. There's no way around that, really. Like, with that double game week, it is such a good double game week to get the main man who scores or assists pretty much every goal for his club on penalties with 2 of the best fixtures in the game in 1 game week where not really any other teams have double game weeks other than Luton. It's a no-brainer. But this game week, yes, it's a great fixture against Burnley, but he's not a must-buy for that game. I wouldn't say this game week that a Solanke should be a prioritised ahead of a Watkins or a Saka. But after Watkins, after Saka, if you've already got those 2 players, and many of you will already have those 2 players, Solanke is the next player to go for. Yes, you don't need him for this game week, but it would be amazing to have him ready in place for next game week. And it's not like he has a weak fixture this week either. So really good idea to get 1 game week ahead of the game by bringing him in this game week, as long as you've got some of the other main players in FPL at the moment. And that is going to be the tier list, guys, complete. I'm happy where we've placed everyone today. I definitely like all of the players in the top 2 categories. If you can manage to get most of the players in must-buy and great transfer in your team ready for Game Week 27, I think you're going to be in a really good position. But of course, let's be aware of the next 2 days, what we're going to find out about Game Week 29, because it's going to be huge and we'll be covering it all on this channel. Thanks so much for watching today, guys. If you did enjoy, make sure you drop a like. Do subscribe if you are new around here as well. I'm probably going to stream tonight after the Brentford versus West Ham game, so stay tuned for that one. The videos in general, though, are going to be a little bit more mixed up this game week because we need to focus on all of the blank Game Week 29 news and the future double game week news, which we're going to get over the next few days, and I want to make sure we've got all of the information available for you guys. So we're going to be working super hard, particularly on the strategy and the kind of fixture schedule type videos this week. So yeah, like I say, stay tuned for that. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.